Hey y'all, just wanted to share with you guys this quick little mapping video. I will be releasing more full screen videos in the future, but for now, I hope this one is helpful. All right, so we're gonna start with point 0. That is the vertical line between her brows. I don't like to look at any other part of the face. I don't look at the nose, the cupid's bow, because I don't want to force the brows to be somewhere where they're not naturally. Now we're gonna mark her bulbs. So I go no more than 2 millimeters from where the brows naturally start. If you try to bring the brows in too close together where there's no hair, you're gonna create a lot more shading work for yourself. And you also can end up with a really obvious line of demarcation between where her brows start and where the shading starts. Next, we're gonna find the arch height line. That's the highest point that her brows touch. If the client's bone structure is very round, it may be easier to do this on one side and then slowly drag the line over to the other side. You just wanna make sure this line is really straight. Now we're gonna find the width of her brows. We're using 2 horizontal lines in between the brows. To avoid confusion, I keep these lines only in the center. I don't drag them over the brows. All right, so now we're gonna start sketching the shape. So I'm gonna start with the bottom line. I like to tilt it down just a little bit to give her a nice lift. And then I'm doing the top line. I want both of these lines to be parallel. There should not be any dips or waviness. And I'm sorry guys, my hand is in the way. That's why this is just a quick mapping video. I will release another one. But I'm just using my string to follow the curves of her arch and tail. You want to make sure that the tail does not drop too low below the bulb. Now, if the client's brows are naturally kind of like that, you don't want to take off too much hair on the tail, but that's just a general rule of thumb. My client's tails are naturally pretty sparse, so that gives us a little bit more wiggle room in where we can place the tail. All right, so now we've got this side done. If you look closely, you can see I kind of went below that bottom width line in the middle of her brows. That is totally normal. You are free to adjust your lines as you need to. I would suggest cleaning them up though, just so it's not messy and confusing. Next, I'm extending the lines of the brow shape back over that center line that we drew in the beginning. This creates little triangles and that can help you gauge your symmetry if the triangles look very similar. Now I'm gonna find her arch. So I don't do the arch lines at the very beginning because whenever I draw the arch, it almost always needs to move. So I like to wait until I at least have one brow shape drawn before I do this. And I'm using my caliper. I'm taking it from the bulb line to that arch line that I just drew, and I'm copying it over to the other side. All right, now we're gonna start drawing the other brow. I usually have to alternate between the string and the pencil when I'm drawing the shapes, but for this client, her brow bone is actually pretty flat. Her brows are pretty easy to draw, so in that case, string was fine. You do want to be careful with how you place the string on the brow bone because it can roll down, especially at the bottom. So don't use a lot of pressure. You want it to be really gentle, just enough to make your mark. It's also okay to move in shorter strokes with the string. Don't feel like you need to be like, somebody on Instagram and do one clean stroke. You can work in sections. Working in smaller sections can help you get cleaner results, and it's a lot less stressful than trying to do it all in one go. Now, one thing that I really like doing is keeping my tail very crisp. The best way that I've found to draw a sharp tail is to make one line slightly longer than the other one, so my top line starts a little bit shorter. Then I'm using my pencil to round out the shape of the arch. You really want your arches to be nice and curved. You do not want them pointy. You don't want them blocky and square. Some people will pay for that, but if you really want to get good clients and if you want your work to look luxe, give the arches a nice curve. All right, now I'm cleaning up that tail a little bit. I don't like my tails to be super long. Clients will ask for that, and I always explain to them that you can still use a little bit of pencil versus tattooing a long tail that could wrap around the eye as your skin changes, and the pigment can also migrate and make it even lower. So I'm cleaning up all my mapping lines. You want to show the client a nice, clean image of her brows versus all those crazy lines, especially if they've gotten really dark and thick. Just clean it all up. And I'm using just a dab of my cellar water on my swab. All right, so we're pretty much finished with the mapping. If you notice, I don't really use a lot of tools at all. I simply use the caliper, string, and a pencil. I like to keep it really simple because once you start using tools and measurements, you can kind of get to the point where you try to force the brows into something else versus respecting what the client has. So as you're wrapping things up, just give everything a really good once over. You can take photos of it to make sure it looks good. You can use the Fee app for measuring. You can have her stand up in a different place. You just want to refresh your eyes so everything really looks good. I noticed that her tail was a little bit dull, so I made it a little bit sharper with the pencil. And then it's showtime. Let the client take a look, explain to her that it's not going to be lined that way. These are just your guidelines. If there are any little tweaks that she wants to make within reason, definitely be open to making those changes, but also make sure that you set some realistic expectations as well. So that's all for this mapping video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested in training with me, you can visit butterbrow.com/training to learn more.